So I got to a point where I could take the body off of this thing, which is kind of exciting because even though it looks like negative progress, it's actually a good step forward. Um, Hopefully from this point on, the progress will start getting more noticeable. Yeah. So anyways, the owner of this car let me know that he found some leather for the interior. He ordered that recently. And hopefully we'll get that leather before too long. And once I get that leather in, then I'll start covering the door panels. And once that's covered, I can finish the doors. Now I did get the doors fitted into the body. That was the last thing I needed to make sure of before I took the body off. And I needed to take the body off for several reasons. One, so I could sand it down and paint it. And two, because there's still work in here I need to do. And one of those things I still need to do is put the drive shaft in. And yeah, I know what you're thinking. Shouldn't that drive shaft have gone in before you put those in? And yeah, you would be right, because obviously, yeah, now it doesn't fit. But I think I can make it work. I had an idea of how I can scooch things around and get this in there without too much difficulty. But before I put it in, I got to thinking, it's kind of cool they have a nice aluminum drive shaft here, and it would look really cool to just leave that bare aluminum. But on the other hand, I really don't think that back in 1935 they were using aluminum drive shafts. Maybe they were. There's some reason I'm thinking they weren't. If any of you know better, let me know. But I'm kind of thinking they were steel. But either that or carbon fiber. But either way, I think I'm going to paint that flat black. So I'll paint the drive shaft flat black, and then I'll squeeze it in there. My idea for squeezing it in is to cut that a little bit shorter so I can push that in more to make it shorter to put in. Once it gets in, then push it out. And of course it'll be like that a little bit, but it'll be glued, and it'll be perfectly fine. It's either that or take that rear end back out, and I really don't want to do that. Speaking of rear ends, no, I'm not going to go that route. Something I did have to do back here, I had to remake a couple of parts. This piece right here, and that's a bar that bolts from here all the way down to here, and there's a step on it that bolts to the rear part here. That piece, the plastic piece, was like bowed, like really badly bent, and I'm looking for it. I thought I saved it. There it is. Pardon my reach here. No, I didn't reach in front of the camera at all. I thought I was going to. But that's this piece right here. So that went in here, and looking at it, it's bowed this way, and it might not look as bad on camera, but it's bowed that way quite a bit, and with it mounted in the car just kind of sat weird. So I remade this out of aluminum. I got some aluminum bars, basically two pieces of aluminum, one piece for this, and then another thinner aluminum plate that got bolted on here. I don't know if you can notice there's a point here and here where this plate got bolted up from the bottom. So that replaced that one. And the other one, I think, is back here. Yeah, this one right here. This one was bowed even worse. This one went back here. So this one, again, is bowed this way. And that went back here. So again, I cut a piece of aluminum the same length as this. And actually, this was 3 pieces of aluminum, because if you'll notice this step right here. So I have one piece of aluminum that would be like from here to here, then another piece from here to here, and then it's bolted here. And got actually 3 bolts in here. Did I make that out of? You know what? Yeah, actually 1, 2, 3, 4 pieces of aluminum. What it is, I have a thinner strip that goes the length of it. So I have a really thin piece the length of it, then a thicker piece here, and then another piece here. So that's why I got the 3 bolts holding all of those pieces together. Then again, it bolts here, 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 and here. Gave me the point to bolt the rear into. And so now that's a nice solid piece of aluminum here and here, so that'll keep that back in nice and steady. Again, I think this is a common problem with these poachers, is that, the weight of this model is setting on these two pieces right here, and they bow, and it just makes it set a little bit off. So anyways, it was a lot of work. It was quite a bit of work cutting and filing and drilling, and looking at it now, I probably could have done a nicer job. But once the body is on, nobody will ever see that again. So anyways, I'm sure it probably would have been fine if I'd have left these until those finally broke. I don't know. I just thought personally it was worth the effort to make those. So I just wanted to point that out, give you the option if you think you might need to do something like that here. So again, I'm going to put the drive shaft in. One other thing I need to do is figure out where the heck this goes. This is one of those flexible metal lines, and it goes through the firewall and it connects to the engine. Let's see if I can get a view of that. Sorry if I get a weird popping noise on the microphone here. But that goes through the firewall. Yeah, that's a really bad shot here. Goes through the firewall, connects right here onto the engine, and it just comes out the other side here. And the instructions don't really, the instruction manual, they don't really address that. They show it go through the firewall, and I just left it long. And I have searched through the manual, through the instructions, and I find no reference for this at all. So I'm thinking it just ends at the firewall. I'm thinking I'm just going to cut it, sticking out maybe just that far through the firewall, and just kind of glue it there in place. Once the interior goes in, you'll never see it. So that's probably what's going to happen there. I'm just leaving it long just in case I do find out where it's supposed to go. But if any of you watching have any ideas, please let me know where to stick that. Okay, so moving on. What else I need to do here? I need to connect the parking brake. So you got a little parking brake lever here, and as you can see, it's pulling a little roller right here. And there's supposed to be a cable. Cable wraps around. Let me see if I can zoom into that a little bit. Right here. And see if it'll focus. That might be as good as it gets. So this is still all loose, but there's a little tab right here. And there's another one right back here. And a couple little jam nuts right here. But you're supposed to tie a cable onto one of those through the opening, around the pulley, back in into that other piece. So that when you pull the park brake, it pulls those tabs and rotates that rod. And then when you rotate that rod, it comes out that side, pulls the cable, and applies the brakes. Which is all good in theory, but on this kit, it ain't going to work. For one thing, even if it did pull to set the brake, there's no spring to pull the brake back. So even if you did pull that one time, now everything here is going to get loose. So yeah, there's that. And once the body is on, this is completely covered underneath. You got this channel here. Once the body's on, that will never be seen again. I kind of wonder how many people actually feed that through and do it the right way. I'm going to try it. I'm going to give it my best. But I got to make sure that if anybody grabs a hold of that park brake here, those cables don't go slack. So, it'll pull it once, but then when it comes back, nothing's going to pull it back. Now, this rod has a little bit of spring tension to it, so I'm kind of tempted. I don't know. If anybody has an idea, let me know. But I'm kind of tempted to put those cables on those two rods straight forward that way. So if somebody does actually pull that park brake, it'll flex the rod will pull back and keep the cables tight. So it'll be doing this instead of actually turning. Because even if it did, even if I mounted them with those things pointed down so it would theoretically rotate the rod, there's nothing keying those little pieces onto the shaft. So it would just spin, it would just turn. It wouldn't turn the rod, it would just slip on the rod and then stay there. Then the cables would look loose. So again, I'm kind of struggling with exactly what to do there. I think I know what I'm going to do, but if anybody has any ideas, feel free and comment. Also, what I'm going to do here, well, once those are all tidied up here, this should be pretty much done and ready to put the floor back in. One other thing I'm considering doing is drilling a hole right about here. So when I put the body on, I'll put a screw into that hole and right into that plastic tab. That'll leave this slot available for the screw to go through to hold the side fender on. I think that'll hold everything in line a lot easier. So I may do that as well. And I don't think I technically have to, but I think it'll just make life a lot easier for me if I do. All right, so waiting for leather. Once the leather gets in, and actually what I may do before the leather gets here is start building up all the seat assemblies ready for the leather. So we'll see what happens there. But what I'm going to focus on now, today, is the bodywork. I went ahead and I put in the spare tire holder, and I very sloppily put some filler in here, because this back body piece is kind of sloped, but that spare tire holder more flat. So a little bit of gaps here, a little bit of gaps here. So I just went all the way around with some filler. So I'll sand that all back nice and smooth and good looking. And then I will, get that in view here. I'll sand all that nice and smooth. I had to add some here because there's a really bad gap between here and the fender. So I'll sand that nice and smooth. And also, if you remember, for the doors, I want to add some plastic stock in the back side here, just to give some meat to screw the door hinges onto. So I'll do that as well. So I'll build that up with some styrene plastic. And then once all of that is done, I'm going to primer the entire body. I will primer the fenders, I will primer the hoods, I will sand and primer the doors, and then the whole body will be primered and pretty much maybe ready for paint. I've already sanded the whole body here. You can tell it looks a little bit flat compared to the doors. Hopefully you can tell that. I have not sanded the doors yet, but I just went over the whole body, sanded that. There really weren't that many like flash lines, a little bit of flashing here. Other than that, it really didn't need sanded that much. Now along the edges here, actually I can fill a little bit right here. These edges were really sharp, and sharp edges don't hold paint very well at all. So you need to take the sharpness off of those edges before you paint it. So anyways, I'm going to stop talking right now because I feel like I've been rambling on for what, like 13 minutes now. So sand, primer, do some stuff, and I'll get back with you when all that's ready. All right, so I got the filler sanded around here, and I think there's a few spots that'll need a little bit more, but it'll be more obvious once I get the primer on it. The primer will show any defects, so I'm sure there's a few spots I'll have to go around again with more filler and more sanding. But yeah, that's looking better. And also on the inside, where the doors go, I bonded in some plastic styrene. Basically, I just took a strip of styrene. I don't even know what thickness is there. I guess I can measure it, but just some scrap pieces of styrene, cut it into strips, and I just bonded it in here behind the hinges, obviously on both sides. And what that does is that gives me a nice, thick, beefy area to attach the hinges to. So for example, if we take a door, here and just kind of stick it in like that. Now it's not going to fit nicely because the body is off of the chassis. When you screw the body onto the chassis, it kind of flexes it a bit. So I fit the doors to that, and some difficulty. There it goes. So anyways, oh, I see the problem is. Yeah, so I bonded the styrene in with this, and that bonds it. Yeah, that kind of welds it to the base plastic, and then just to make sure it's nice and sturdy while that's setting, I went over it with some thin CA just to help bond it to the structure. And I got a little bit carried away with that, it looks like. So I'm just going to trim that excess here away. That's just that CA that got into that hinge opening. Hopefully that's all that was keeping me from getting that door put in. A little bit here, it looks all right. I'll have to go over that with a little file, clean it up nice and square later. But now that should set in there better, right, like that. So the plan is, when I actually go to fit the doors, the body will be mounted to the chassis. I will put some slow setting epoxy, something thick so it won't run, on each area here, here and here. And then I will put the door in place, and I will tape the door into the opening so everything is all flush with an even seam. And then once that epoxy is cured, I will then gently open the door. And so with the door opened and hopefully still epoxied in place, I can then go in and drill a hole here and here and put a screw in there, and that will then screw it to those plastic styrene strips that I put into the back. And again, I got plenty of stock here for those screws to go in. So then those door hinges will be screwed and glued into place, and that should give me a nice, solid, steady door hinge. And since it was bonded in with the door closed, then I know the door should reclose in a proper position. So that's my thought behind that. Again, if you remember back when I first looked at those hinges, the little pocket cutouts, the little pockets here, they just weren't positioned properly for the hinges to fit in right. So I cut them out and I'm redoing those basically. So anyways, next step for this is to get a coat of primer on it. And once I get a coat of primer on it, I'll be able to tell better where I need to do more work as far as sanding or filling. One other thing on this one, when I took the body off, this front piece right here just broke off. I don't know if it was cracked originally and I just finally did it, but I bonded it back on again with the solvent to solvent weld it back together. And just to make sure it wouldn't break off again, I put some carbon fiber strands here on the bottom side where it wouldn't be seen, and I just use CA glue to bond those on, and carbon fiber strands in the back here. I don't know if it's going to show up in the camera very well, but again, carbon fiber strands here, so hopefully that won't break again. What I recommend to anybody who does any kind of model building at all, go on eBay and look up carbon fiber tow. You can get a spool of this stuff. It's just carbon fiber strands. Well, it's called carbon fiber tow, but you can pull it apart into skinnier, and this is perfect for doing repairs. Use this with CA glue, and I've repaired tons of stuff with this stuff, and works pretty well. So anyways, I'll stop talking. I'll get this in primer, as well as the fenders and the hood, and I'll show you what that looks like. All right, so I'm getting pretty excited about this. I know it might not look like much, but having the whole thing in primer is, for me, is a major step, because that pretty much signifies that everything fits. The hood fits, the fenders fit, the doors fit, which I just realized I forgot to paint the doors, but that's not that big of a deal. I can always get that later. So it's a few coats of filler primer. I had to put in a little bit of spot glaze filler, and then re-primered a few areas. I still need to do like a fine grit sanding down of everything, make it nice and smooth and ready for paint. But I think it looks really good so far. As you can see, the seam around there where the spare tire holder goes looks pretty good. Everything just looks good. So probably today, later today, I will order the paint. He just wants it gloss black, which makes it easy. I'll order I'll order Model Masters. That's typically what I use. I'm familiar with Model Masters, and I have good luck with their paint. There might be better stuff out there, but like I said, it's what I'm familiar with, and I get good results with it. So I'll go online and I'll order the glossiest glossy black paint I can find. I'm still trying to decide if I want to put a clear coat on it. I might just spray it with the gloss black and let it set for a week or two, and then polish it and see what it looks like. I don't think I'll need a clear coat, but we'll see. We'll see after that. Also, I put the Driveshaft in. I just painted a Driveshaft flat black. I'm tempted to put a little bit of some rust on it, you know, just to put a few little rust highlights. Also, the mufflers and exhaust pipes could use some rust highlights just to make it a little, you know, a little more like a 100-year-old car and not a brand new car. I still need to put the cable in for the park brake, but that shouldn't be that big of a deal. So, I think for now this is where I will leave it. It'll be a while before I actually get the color on the body, but hopefully the next video will be doing some leather work, getting the interior started and starting on some of that leather, which I'm kind of looking forward to, but at the same time kind of not, because I've not done any leather work on a model this size. So we'll kind of have to wait and see how that goes. So, as always, until next time, thanks for watching.